Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherrilyn and I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, thank you for joining me every single upload. You know I love and I appreciate you so much. Today I don't really have any updates really. I don't know. I think will go live in like a couple days, and by that point I won't have announced what my big project is that I did just finished, which is why I missed you last week. I had to wrap up everything with that, and it was just a lot. All good things. So I missed you terribly. Also, make sure you are following for the release of my new podcast with Cece Suarez, which is Here for the Clout. You can follow us on Instagram, YouTube. I believe we should be set up for like Spotify and all of those things at this point. We're also just kind of raw dogging it out here and pretending like we know how to be podcasters. So that's a venture inside we haven't been on. I know somebody said that it wasn't on showing up on their podcast streaming service yet. So we'll get that figured out before the 2nd of August when we go live. Hopefully. Okay. On that podcast, we talk about like clout queens, clout goblins, we like to call them. And the monster that we're talking about today, I have a feeling there was points in her journey on being on social media where she could have been like a clout queen perhaps. And then she just ended with not even being a clout goblin, but just a monster, demon, if you will. So let's get right into that. Before we do, I have a quick riddle for you. I have branches, but no fruit, trunk, or leaves. What am I? You think about the answer, I have something to boost your mental sharpness with today's sponsor, Twisted Tangle. If you are a regular Sippin, you know I love a good mobile game. It's definitely a tool I use for a number of things on the daily. I have usually several games in queue that I use for different moods and requirements, and this game in particular is perfect for just de-stressing and resetting my focus when I'm super overwhelmed. And lately I feel like I've been reaching for it a lot. Since I found it. Ooh, I have a daily reward that I haven't got. I love that. I love checking in for the daily reward. Oh, and I got new collector cards. Let's see what we got. Ooh, a pizza and cello. So if you've never heard of Twisted Tangle, it is a 3D puzzle game that challenges your mind with not solving games. And I love it because it's super interactive. You can bounce them around. So sometimes if I'm feeling like I need something to hook under, it'll totally do the movements. You also get like a little bit of that ASMR feeling because it gives the vibration of the moves. Although it's challenging, it's satisfying at the same time. It always makes me feel like a brainiac when there's a level labeled really hard and I see this disaster zone of something I think is absolutely impossible to solve, and then I solve it. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I also ask Big Guy to help me, and then sometimes I'll do one and try to challenge him and stump him, but he always gets it. So his accomplishments are my accomplishments. As of now, there are already 1,000 levels and new levels that are added regularly, so it's constantly being updated and there's new levels for you. It's free to download and you can also play it without Wi-Fi, so it's perfect for on-the-go gaming. If you are also seeking mental challenge and a sense of achievement, Twisted Tangle offers something for everybody who loves a good game puzzle adventure like me. You can download now and test your skills using the link in my description or the QR code on the screen. Thank you again so much, Twisted Tangle, for sponsoring today's video. All right, today we are talking about Instagram influencer turned human trafficker, Cat Torres. Shout out to my girl, Brooke McKenna. I just saw when I was looking for any updates in the case that she did a video on Cat as well. I don't know if it was this week or last week. I haven't watched it yet, but go check hers out too. There's always, things we all see differently and different personalities that present it, and I absolutely adore Brooke. So anyways, Cat. Don't adore Cat. Cat, the way I understand it is she kind of, I don't know if this has actually been confirmed, but she portrayed herself as like a rags to riches story. Somebody who came from a very poor upbringing and then became this like wellness influencer with over 1 million followers on Instagram. And she was also at one point an international model. And so she was rubbing shoulders with celebrities, one of them being Leonardo DiCaprio, who she was like photographed with. That's where the whole like clout thing thing comes in, because then, there was like this buzz around her, like, oh, is this Leonardo's new girl? If she was over 25 at the time, probably not. Those who knew Cat said that initially she comes off as very sweet, somebody who wanted to use her influence to help others. I'm assuming that this is said about her while she was kind of sharing her dreams. Like, okay, this is kind of where I want to go and this is what I want to do when I get there. So I don't know how we went from wanting to help people with their health and wellness journey to using followers as slaves and trafficking them. Cat Torres was born in the city of Belém, which is described as a poorer neighborhood in northern Brazil, on October 24th, 1992. Allegedly, her family life was rough. Her father is said to be an alcoholic, and from a very young age, everybody would tell her how beautiful she was. So she turned to modeling at a very young age in hopes of making her own money and having the independence of being able to leave her family environment. Now, around the age of 18, she was picked up by a modeling agency. According to her ex, it was the modeling agency Elite Model Management. And then in 2012, she was crowned Miss Calleras. From there, she did a ton of modeling. She was modeling in Europe. She started doing shoots in Milan, South Korea, Colombia. I always thought of when somebody goes to Milan as being like, wow, you have made it. One of my friends from high school won a competition and went out to Milan and shot, and literally is a model to this day. So from making her mark in the modeling world, Cat, not my friend, well, my friend did as well, but she's a very nice person. Okay, anyways, Cat was invited to these like exclusive parties where she's rubbing shoulders with, high profile people, celebrities. And then, like I said, she's photographed with somebody of the likes of Leonardo DiCaprio and just automatically tied to him as his new girlfriend. And looking back on interviews of her around this time, she definitely knew how to play the game and capitalize on this allure of her, because she never would outright say yes or no. She was asked a couple of times like to comment on the situation, and she would just say like she couldn't. So she had this, mystery about her, which is why I say like if she was, a club queen and doing innocent things, but using a little bit of leverage opportunity to get her name out there, that's a decent way of going about it. Just being like, oh, I can't talk about it right now. Stay tuned. Eventually, she moves to the US, and at this point, her social media really takes off. She started an Instagram, and I would say that it was more lifestyle-ish focused, also with like health and wellness and beauty. And as her following grew, she was able to make a profitable business by creating this wellness program to sell to clients. This is definitely around that era where a lot of people were doing that. Somebody who first comes to mind who did it really well and has stuck to it is Kayla Istines. But it was kind of like that era when she first started her BBG guide, and then from there has grown her business. I'd say with Cat, she was definitely selling also a lifestyle dream and not just focusing on the workout aspect and eating aspect of it. She's posting vacation pictures, beautiful houses, trips around the world, just showing everybody the highlight reel that she wants to show. And eventually she comes out with a self-help book as well. And this shows a lot more of her life and allows people into this rougher upbringing, which definitely plays on people's emotions. And that kind of sets her up as this inspiring figure for people to look up to, kind of like selling a dream, I guess. If I can do this, anybody can, and come and figure out how I did it. So from that, she starts a coaching program, which focused on teaching people how to manifest the life that they wanted. The videos that she posted were definitely giving very TFU vibes, Twin Flame Universe, if you guys haven't seen my videos on that. Painting herself as an expert and having a series of videos that her clients could watch and just kind of feel like they were having that constant guidance and comfort by watching her. She said to pull a lot of inspo from people that she looked up to, Tony Robbins being one of them. People said that she idolized him. She went to his conferences and said that that is like the coaching style that she was aiming for. Another guy that she really admired was John of God, who's a controversial Brazilian medium leader who was later convicted of a number of grape. I hate having to say that, RAP charges. He was even featured on Oprah, I think twice. I got conflicting reports. I think there was like one where he was on Oprah and then they also like replayed the episode when she had her like own network. And I think everybody knows, like at that time when you were on Oprah, you definitely had like one of, if not the biggest platforms to sell yourself, especially in that niche. And so a lot of people flocked to him. From what I know, Oprah's website has now removed the series that they had, and it was called Do You Believe in Miracles? But eventually what comes up is a lot of people who found him, believed in him, were manipulated and abused. He's also been accused of performing life-altering surgeries on a lot of his followers, which he has absolutely no degree whatsoever in doing. And he's said it's not actually him that's performing the surgeries. It's like God through him doing the surgeries. So this was kind of like her business model concerning anyways. A lot of her clients were seeing improvements in their life, which I'm not surprised about. Being somebody who has manifested things in my entire life from a very, very young age before I even knew what manifesting was, I definitely believe in it. So for somebody who may not know anything about it or ever has never had that experience with like shifting your mindset to complete positivity, it probably can be really encouraging and surprising the strength of like having self-love and positive affirmations. So I can 100% see how if they're hearing this from the first time from her, it would feel life-changing initially for them. As they're seeing all of these positive changes in their life, they are attributing it to her. And so she starts then shifting her coaching to, all right, well, you can now, instead of just having this course and this generic whatever, we can do like the 1v1 calls, just me and you. And she would charge like $150 per call. So you better believe the people who had seen just like a fraction of an improvement from what she was selling paid. And from there, they said that once they got that even closer interaction with them, Cat had a very special gift of making them feel special. This is oftentimes where women who interacted with her describe themselves as being in a very low point in their life, which is, again, a reoccurring pattern that we see in these situations. And it makes sense, like when things in your life are amazing, you're on top of the world, you're not generally going out to seek somebody else's help and guidance, and surely not wanting to pay a lot of money in a desperate situation for it, right? And so those people who are feeling more desperate are more vulnerable and also susceptible to people like this taking advantage of you. A lot of women who came forward to talk about their experience with Cat said that they were in abusive relationships. Some of them were suffering from addiction. They were dealing with years of trauma that was untreated, and they just wanted it gone so bad. So she becomes the most influential person in these people's lives, and they're turning to her for everything. One quote that I heard from the BBC World Series that I watched, it's called Like, Follow, Trafficked. I'll have it linked so you can check it out. But this one woman on there says, all of my doubts, any insecurities I had, any questions in my life, any decisions that I needed to make in that time that they were speaking to her, they always went to her first so that those decisions could be made together, like with that person and with Cat. So they're also confiding some of their darkest secrets to her, paying also to do so, right? We have to remember that there is a, like exchange of services here, and she's definitely coming up on top because she's making money. Now, those who hung around in her circle said that they had questions also about the money that she was making, and I think this is really important. So she had designer clothes, really nice things, like a ballin' New York City apartment that was like on one of the top floors, which many initially assumed that she was able to afford because of when she was modeling. But as like the money just comes rolling in, one of her roommates even says that she asked him to go down to grab a FedEx envelope for her. And when he grabbed it, he could tell like inside was a stack of cash. Then that assumption kind of shifted to like, oh, maybe she's a sugar baby, which is fine. This is not also something that's uncommon for people portraying a certain lifestyle as an influencer or like boss babe, if you will. And they're selling this dream of whatever they're trying to sell you, that making the money. But in reality, that's not actually what's funding it. And often it is these types of like sugar baby situations, which again, absolutely fine if you're transparent with it. Not saying that, oh, what I'm trying to sell you, like that's how I got all of this money, and so you can too. According to her friends, this way of alleged income ended when Cat said that she got a flesh-eating disease that was attacking like her breasts and had her implants removed. So after this point in her life, she kind of further leaned into the spiritual side of things, attending specifically ayahuasca ceremonies. And when it comes to ayahuasca, like no judgment at all. I actually think it's quite fascinating. If I were ever to do it, I would want to go to like Peru to do it, but I would never because I just know me. And we got enough going on here. I don't think it would be good, but I think that it has really beneficial traits, or no, what am I trying to say? Tools, resources. It's a beneficial tool or resource for people. I learned a little bit more about ayahuasca while I was looking into this case, and I learned that ayahuasca translates to vine of the soul, which I think is really cool when you look into its healing purposes. And this has been used as, medicinal, spiritual, ceremonial purposes for over 1,000 years. It's in indigenous populations like Peru, Ecuador, and other countries along the Amazon basin. And basically, ayahuasca it's a boiled mixture of various plants that create this red or brown liquid. And then when you drink it, it will alter your senses, can change a person's reality. I've heard that you go through a series of emotions. Some people can get quite sick, but according to research, there are many benefits. It says that ayahuasca may protect brain cells and stimulate neural cell growth. It can also boost your mood, improve mindfulness, and treat depression and addiction disorders. This is on, I believe, healthline.com. So it also states that there is more research that is needed to confirm these effects. But I mean, even for the most part, I do know that there are certain practitioners who do believe that if this is in a very controlled environment with somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, like I said, like if you were to go and travel to Peru or something like that, I have no doubt that it can be life-altering positively. That being said, though, I personally think that this needs to be done by people who have, that generational experience and knowledge. And allegedly, she was doing these ceremonies in like some backyard in Beverly Hills and drinking it monthly. I don't know what the stance is on that, of how often, people would recommend who are actually well-versed and educated in ayahuasca. If you are or know any more about it, I'd love to know in the comments if that's like a little bit of an overdrive. At this point, Cat starts going into, now from a young age, she's always had this spiritual gift of, I guess we would call it maybe being a medium. She's seeing revelation, she's making predictions, she's able to communicate with spiritual voices that she calls the voice. And so from this point, her self-help turned into more of that coaching spiritual leader brand. And this made her clients even more dependent on her, because now she's saying that the messages that she's receiving and relaying to them, these are coming from somebody higher than her. This is coming from, quote unquote, the voice, telling them what to do and what not to do, and also instilling fear into them that this is not her that's deciding this. This is the voice, and we don't mess with it. So, do as I'm saying, or the voice is telling you, or else something horrible is going to happen. And this allowed her to isolate a lot of people. She encouraged her followers to break off relationships, saying that she was getting vibes and messages that their significant other or family members were toxic, and she just needed to end things with them. And then again, if they didn't, terrible things were going to happen. And as that isolation started, she kind of started picking away at people, that got a lot more intense for a number of her close followers. One of them, who spoke in the BBC doc, said that Cat reached out to her and persuaded her to move from Brazil to New York to be her live-in assistant. And her recollection of kind of how everything went was that it went so fast that she didn't really have too much time to consider it. And at that point, didn't really have many people to talk to, because Cat had kind of put a wedge between her and a lot of people in her life. So it was kind of like, I have this opportunity. I can get you out here right now. I need help. Come on out. So she moves to New York to live with Cat. She's being told she's going to make $2,000 a month to be her assistant. And she was just going to be, there to kind of do things around the house more than assistant work, like do some tidying up, cooking, laundry, help with the pets, that kind of thing. And she said when she arrived, it was very different. And the first thing that she kind of saw a red flag about was that the impression that Cat portrayed online and on her social media was very put together. Like I said, she's presenting this highlight reel of these elaborate vacations, beautiful house, designer clothes. And when she arrives, this is not this perfect Instagram feed is not the life that she has. When she got to the house, she said it was not even just really messy, but very dirty. It smelled bad. And it seemed like Cat was just not able to even do minimal tasks by herself. Even when she was showering, she would have this girl come into the shower and talk with her, because she couldn't be alone. Again, if this is something that somebody is going through, that's fine. I know even times in my life where I've, been in those situations where it causes me anxiety just to be alone. And now I'm just sometimes overwhelmed by not being alone. But you have to remember that this woman is selling, these self-help courses and is this expert in transforming your life. Meanwhile, it's clear that she's not in the best situation to be doing that. So the woman who ended up going down to help her said it got to the point where there was not a time of the day that she was not at Cat's beck and call. The only time that she said she could even just sleep for only a few hours at times was if Cat was out with somebody on a date or whatever. And then when she came home, whether it was 2 a.m, 3 a.m, she had to wake up and either cook for her or just be at her service. It got to the point where it was so overwhelming and she was so tired that in the middle of the day, she would tell her, I'm just going to quickly go and get my workout in the gym. But she would just go down, grab a yoga mat and sleep, have a quick nap so that she could just get away for a minute. And this is where she's, trying to stick it out, and then it comes time to pay and she's not getting paid. And then she just kind of feels stuck there. There was a way that Cat would slowly kind of control everything, like your phone, your documents, your possessions. When she would try to confront Cat to be like, okay, I need money or I need to go, she'd flip the script and be like, you're controlling, you're triggering a painful part of my life. I used to be in a abusive relationship and this is exactly what they did. It's giving Clinton Kane. So this woman would say, she in her mind knew that it was wrong. She's like, I'm basically working as a slave for this woman. I'm not making any money. But in the same sense, she felt sorry for her and kind of like was like wanting to stick it out, and it kind of shifted up like her being there for her. Finally, though, after 3 months, she was able to break away, but there were other people who encountered Cat that dealt with far more trauma. In 2002, her and her second husband, they moved to Texas. And this is where her controlling and abusing people just completely amplified. She'd target, I think, followers who were really open to wanting to get closer to her. And I always worry about this because I don't ever want people to just, I don't know, like blindly, I got to be careful with this because I think that there are people out there who do really great things and have things that you can pay for, like Kayla Istein's, for example. You know, like she has grown and done so much for like health and wellness. And so buying her course and her constantly like adding new programs and people and coaches into her things, like that's not what I'm saying. So for this, it's like she was reaching out to followers, but not like to help and grow a similar business with them. It was like she would become dependent on them or make it seem like that. So then these followers would feel really special, I guess, like because they're having this like a parasocial relationship, but then in their minds that's validated because then Cat is reaching out to them, looking to them for help, saying things like she's having, you know, thoughts of harming herself and she needs them. And these people would come out and move to Texas or, you know, come out to Texas to stay a while. And I think that manipulation is really scary because she's in control, but making it seem like the people that she's targeting and abusing and controlling are in control, if that makes sense. Did I just make sense at all? At one point, she had several younger women, like in their like early 20s, out in Texas living with her, and she would kind of call themselves like the clan, and she was like, "Oh, we're witches, and you know, this is my witch clan." Once they got there, same thing. It's like that they're at her beck and call 24/7. They're not getting paid to be there, and then she starts telling these victims that the voice is talking to her about what the next steps of their success look like. And one of them was to go and get a job as a dancer at a strip club. And she says that's where you're going to find your husband. Like that is the stepping stone that you need to make this great change in your life. Remember, this is coming from the voice, the higher up. This is not her. She's portraying it, I guess, essentially as of whatever God, whoever she's talking to, believes in. She makes that fear of not doing it so intense that they go for it. We come to learn that basically every cent that was made in the club went to Cat. And when any woman would question her or kind of give her pushback, she would say that, "Hey, I brought you out here. You owe me thousands of dollars because I've invested in you. I flew you out. You have furniture in your room. I've given you a place to stay. So if you leave right now, like this is the tally of everything that you owe me and you have to pay this back." She'd also say that if they left, they'd be cursed. So not only is that stress of just this financial obligation of when they didn't even think that anything had been, you know, invested in them needs to be paid back, but they're going to be cursed with just something horrific happening to them. The understanding for these women was that the dancing was always just going to be a temporary scenario. And Kat didn't really know, you know, what the timeline was, but the voice is telling her that it's temporary and that the goal of every day should be to make at least $1,000. So if they didn't make $1,000, there were times where they would just sleep outside because she'd be like, if you don't have your money, don't come home. Something that's important to remember is these women that dealt with this specific abuse were, I believe every one of them was from Brazil. So not only have they traveled far to get there, but Kat tells them that it was illegal bringing them there and then having them work at the club was illegal, and that she had to do like all of this witchcraft to get them there, to get them accepted into the club because they didn't have a visa. And again, now you've got like this witchcraft aspect to it. On top of that, though, they're scared of not relying on her because they're like, okay, well, what the heck is going to happen to me, like legality wise? Even if they wanted to go back home at that point, they didn't have their passports. She's held every dollar that they're making to pay her back. And I guess it's easy to put yourself in scenarios and judge and, you know, shoulda, coulda, woulda. How do you get yourself in these situations? But I think what's harder to do is just put all the what ifs aside and just accept the fact that, okay, like you have gotten yourself into this situation. No one plans for that. How terrifying that must feel to actually feel trapped in that and doing something that you don't want to do. Not that work in any way, like if that's what you want to do is wrong, right? If that's what your path is, that's fine. But think about somebody who might be insecure, might, I don't know, just might not want to do it, and then feel like they had absolutely no choice. It just puts things into a different perspective of really feeling just like so trapped. On top of that, the house that they were living in Texas with Cat and her husband, it was like a rental house. It was quite nice, but they were like frauds too. They're not paying their bills and stuff like that. He also kind of seemed like a loose cannon, had several guns, and I don't think ever threatened anybody, but made those like secret threats, if you want to, not secret threats, but like obvious threats where, you know, the guns were always visible and like, you know, targeting around the house. Just the thought of it like makes me feel like, I'm not a big gun gal. Don't like guns. So if I just saw somebody just randomly walking around with a gun every day in my house, like that automatically would make me feel super uneasy and a little bit scared to speak up. Then from the club, this escalated into Cat setting up profiles on things like sugar baby websites or escort websites for these women. And she would tell them, okay, well, like if you don't like going to the club, then we can do this. And this is actually a better route anyways, because think about like all the hours that it would take you at the club to make X amount of money. You can just do this in like one afternoon with a client one-on-one. Now the logistics of doing something illegal is even higher because that's illegal in Texas. And now these women are like, oh, okay. So she has even more, not only of me working without a visa, but I'm also doing something I'm not allowed to do here. And Kat would remind them all the time that this is illegal and that I will go to the police and report you. The way that Kat would try to spin this though and still have control, it wasn't like as aggressive as like, oh, I'm going to report you. It would kind of be like those sprinkles of things like, I've had to do a lot to even like make this happen because this is so illegal. Like we wouldn't want anybody finding out. And she'd also say that in order to be successful, you needed to be pushed out of your comfort zone. Like only people who've made a lot of money have done so because they've gotten out of their comfort zone, which to a degree I do agree with. But that manipulation and control and like telling somebody how they're going to make their money, no. Going through her social media around this time, you can also just see that her posts became more disturbing and erratic. She would just get on there and call herself your queen. She would say that she's Jesus Christ, Mother Mary. We've talked about this in other similar episodes. It's like if anybody is calling themselves like God or something to that equivalent, run. Like, you gotta go. She also targeted two of the women who were able to get away from her and try to flip the script on them and get her followers to go and slander them online and tag them in things and attack them. And she'd say like, oh, they tried to ruin my life, just already planting a seed of doubt in people's minds so that if these women ever did speak up, it's like she had already tried to paint them in a bad light, being like, oh no, Kat already said it's them who did this. Meanwhile, she didn't know that these women had already filed police reports against her. So when she's doing things like this on social media and then like calling herself like the Messiah and stuff like that, it's not looking good for her. Meanwhile, the families of two of the women who were still living with her at this point had lost all contact, and they were getting really concerned for their daughters. They ended up filing police reports just saying that their daughters had come out for work and it had been several months since they had heard from them and they were concerned for their safety. It even made it to the news. The families also created social media pages and campaigns to get the story out there, which was getting a lot of traction, and people were tagging Cat, being like, oh, do you want to weigh in and talk about this? And she obviously goes on the defense and says like, if I have people, yeah, they've come out and done like little jobs for me. They are getting paid, like insinuating that the two women who were still with her were being abused. She's saying they had a decent salary and like no one knows what they're talking about. She also gets them to make videos of their own. And looking at them, it's really, it's sad because it's almost like you can see not only like a fear in their eyes, but also kind of like this, maybe the manipulation and control of, there's also an aspect of them possibly believing what they're saying. She's created wedges in so many people's relationships and saying that like, get your family off of us. Like, look what I'm saying. Like, they're so toxic that they've caused all of this. They've got the wrong impression of me.
Eu tô gravando esse vídeo pra ordenar que vocês parem de me perseguir. Parem de me procurar, parem de perguntar a terceiros sobre o meu paradeiro. Se eu bloqueei todos vocês, tem um motivo. Quer dizer que eu não quero falar com nenhum de vocês. Tô muito bem, eu tenho poder de escolha, eu tenho livre-arbítrio que Deus deu pra todos nós. Então eu tô vivendo a minha vida e saco, vocês são insuportáveis. Me deixem em paz.
Desde a última vez que eu vi eles, eu falei, não me procura mais. Não me procura mais, eu não quero mais falar com vocês. Quantas vezes eu vou ter que falar? Quantas vezes?
So their poor families are just left to just kind of watch all of this unfold from social media, essentially on the sidelines. And then they finally find their profiles that are set up online and the address to the home that they're living at with Cat and her husband. They're also connected to some of the women who had also had awful experiences with Cat, and they're able to report to the FBI their own personal experiences with Cat and the things that they had to do through her control. So at this point, it gains even more, I guess, weight for the police to actually take a deeper look into things. Going back to other cases that we've talked about with cults and stuff like that, it's so hard to actually prove that somebody is controlling somebody's life, because if they're an adult and you speak to them and they're like, I'm fine, I'm making my own decisions, there's really not much you can do. It takes a lot to break that down and find somebody who is just like instantly going to crack and come out and be like, yeah, actually I'm being held against my will, because there's a part of them that believes it, but then there's also a part of them that doesn't want to believe it, and they're so manipulated by that point. So all the police can really do is make that call, that initial call, and say, are you okay? Are you being held against your will? Which, of course, when this happens, the women are like, no, like everything is fine. We're good. That call was actually recorded in the car as Cat was taking it with the two women. And before the women are even talking to the police, before the police even get on the call, there's like a clip of Cat who's saying like, this is a police officer, like they're not to be trusted. They have all of like the tricks up their sleeves. You better be careful and watch like what you say, because they can take anything that you say and flip it. And if you say something wrong, like I will freak out, like you are going to get kicked out of the car. So now they're watching what they're saying.
I guess that's Desiree next to you?
Yes, that's me.
Desiree, did you color your hair?
Yeah, but a long time.
Oh, okay. I guess for some reason I thought it was black.
No.
No? Oh, okay. My mistake. And how are you like in America so far?
Very nice.
Are they treating you kindly?
Yes.
And are you well?
Yes.
You're doing well?
Yes.
Safe and sound? You look like you're doing well. I don't see what the issue is.
And again, they came here on their own. They didn't come here for me. They are helping me out, yeah. But I just don't want anything bad to happen to them.
What I thought was really amazing, though, is the officer on the phone was calm and respectful, and even saying and acknowledging to the women, like, okay, yeah, like, you seem to look good, you seem to be okay, nothing out of concern. And I think that gives a victim like some validation of being like, okay, first of all, I've done my job. Like, my abuser is not going to think that I've outed them or anything. And since he seemed so calm and understanding, even for Cat, he was able to convince her to go to a police station in Maine and talk with them in person. One of the investigators that spoke to the girls specifically was that he could see initially like they're very closed off, which is common especially with human trafficking survivors. Just that little clip gives us an insight of what like a trafficker or abusers are saying to people behind the scenes. When they talk to Kat, it almost gave me like, I'm not trying to be funny, but like one of those Romy and Michelle high school reunion moments where the two of them are at the breakfast place and they're in like their suits and everything, and they're like, we want the business woman special. And the server's like, what kind of business are you in? And they hadn't thought that out yet. That's kind of like what happened to Kat. The detectives are asking like, okay, you've got these girls to work. Like, what are they doing? What is your job? And she just didn't really know what to say. Like there was no business model or what they were getting paid or what their job entailed. Like she was like Romy and Michelle. She was just like, okay, I don't know. I think she just kind of left it with like, I'm their life coach. And it was like take with that what you will. So that's a huge red flag. And what the detectives saw is a behavior that they're actually quite used to. And I loved hearing this part in the documentary as well, because he explains that human traffickers aren't always like what we see on the movie, where it's like, like this gang and then they kidnap somebody and they take them. He's like, in fact, it's actually way more common to have this type of scenario of being like, that's what trafficking is. It's somebody that you trust. You've already have a relationship of trust built with them, and they've really honed in on those grooming tactics. Something else to consider is abuse can play out in so many different ways. So you might not be physically abused, but what's happening in these scenarios is absolutely abuse. You're being mentally and emotionally abused and controlled. And these situations are even more terrifying sometimes because this is somebody who has groomed you, who has build up your trust in them and distrust in others. And they make you think like this is for your best interest. Then from there, you get the isolation. You've got the isolation from your family and your friends. Then you have the isolation from your location, even for the women who were brought from Brazil. How far away from home are you? And then financially, everything you're making is going to her. And then now you've got quotas to make. Like, whether she believes that she's a trafficker or not, every single box was ticked. Now, they were able to arrest her for visa irregularities, which is good because at this point, they were trying to enter into Canada. I feel like we would have still been able, us Canadians, like would have been able to do something. But at this point, when you're already working with like officials in the US, it complicates things. Now you're entering a new country and just gives them more time to, get even further away. Kat ended up getting deported back to Brazil in November 2022. And after her charges of human trafficking, slave labor, and medical fraud came out, over 20 women had reported also being exploited and scammed by her. While she was waiting for her sentencing, she was interviewed by a duo of reporters. I think at first she was interviewed by a female and then a male, and she was just not down with the female one at all. And she's just so confidently being like, oh, when the verdict comes back, like, I'm going to be out of here. I'll probably be out of here in like less than 10 days because there's no proof. She's like, there's no crime, denied that anybody even lived with her, even though she was constantly on social media showing these women living in her house with her. Also denied that there was ever messages to people saying like, come out and live with me, even though, again, we have ways of tracing this. Even if you deleted that DM, that person on the other end, either way, I suppose works. They didn't. So everything that she was denying, it was just like, sometimes when people lie, I'm like, do you just like, do you actually believe it? Do you believe it? And that's even what the female interviewer said. She's like, okay, so nobody lived with you, but we see them living here. She's like, no. And she's like, and then all of these messages that you sent to women asking them to come out and work for you, those are fake? She's like, yeah, it's all fake.
Nobody lived with me. No women lived with me, other than my dog. That is a girl. My cat, that is a girl. No women live with me.
We've seen messages from you inviting young women to live with you.
Man, if you did not see a message in the federal police, you cannot believe this message is from me. I want to say...
So do you think the messages that we've seen from multiple women are fake?
Absolutely.
Not only that, but there's bank transfers that they had from one of the women. And she's like, oh, no, yeah, like that's fake. Like, so anything that had gotten transferred in this woman's account had to get transferred immediately over to Cat. And she's like, no, they never sent me money. So when she shows her and confronts her, she's like, oh yeah, that was back pay for like Ubers that she took. She's like, 4,000 euros, which is like what? Almost like 8,000, maybe 7,000 Canadian in Uber a month. She's like, yeah. Fuck. It's not funny. Like, it's actually like just so infuriating that it's funny. I just want to throw punch people sometimes. That is not a threat.
What about the bank transfers from Desiree where she's depositing money into your account?
The same thing.
You're saying that's completely fake?
No,
They never sent you money?
Whatever she could use from me, she did. But I didn't know what she was doing.
You didn't know she was sending you money?
Yes, I know she was sending me money to take Ubers. And I said
Some of the transfers were £600. Was she taking a £600 Uber?
Yeah.
Ultimately, on July, so this year, 2024, if you're watching this in the future, July 2024, she was convicted of human trafficking and slavery and was only sentenced to 8 years, which in my personal, humble, doesn't mean anything opinion, that is garbage for human trafficking and slavery charge. I don't know what kind of message that sends, but I don't like it. I can understand that because most of the cases that we talk about where people lose their lives, no one has in this situation. But at the end of the day, these are real people who went through something traumatic. We are in no place to judge. We have no idea where they walked, like what they dealt with in their lives that got them up to that situation. So now for them to have gone to somebody to really rely on them and trust them and be further traumatized is really upsetting. A lot of these women went through a period where they're like, oh my gosh, like I was at a point where I was so low, I didn't think I could go lower. I went to somebody to lift me up, and now I'm even lower than I ever thought I could go. They didn't want to live anymore. They have no choice but to just go through extensive amounts of therapy and just like try to do like some self-help. Again, you've got to think about that's what they did initially. So the trauma of even trying to trust somebody again to get them to a healthy space is like a whole debacle in itself. And what pisses me off so much is that when she's been asked, like, how does that make you feel? Like, these are people who trusted you, and this is their truth. Like, this is their experience and how they felt. Like, they feel traumatized. She's like, I don't believe it. Like, they're ridiculous. And if that's what they felt by their interaction with me, then they should still be getting raised by, their parents. Like, you're not tough enough. Like, you should have been tougher. And I can't stand that. That's why the 8 years really upsets me, because it's like there is no accountability whatsoever. Does not think she did anything wrong. Thinks that we just believe her denying things when there's literal proof and evidence in front of her. Like, is like, oh yeah, like just take my word for it. And she straight up said, when asked, do you take accountability for any of these allegations? She says, absolutely not. Zero.
Do you take any accountability for any of these allegations?
Absolutely not. Zero.
She ended up wrapping up that portion of the interview with that female saying, like, you can believe whatever you want. Like, if you're not believing that I've done nothing wrong, then, like, you do you, boo-boo. Like, I can only go as far as just, like, telling you that I have these gifts and that I haven't done anything. And if you think that, like, I don't have gifts and you think I'm the devil, then, like, you watch and find out. Like, you'll find out if I have powers or not. So, like, literally threatens the interviewer. So for that on camera where she knows she's being filmed and she's been that bold, it just gives you like an insight of how much she was probably threatening behind the scenes and probably how good at it she was, which is gross to even say. Like, you're not good at it, but like manipulative you were, because you were comfortable enough to go to that degree on camera. Anyways, I hope that the experience over the next 8 years is horrendous. I hope she gets a UTI weekly, and yeah, that's what I hope for. I can't get on board. Oh, I'm terrible at my job because I'm like, was part of the stipulation, I'll put it in the comments, if she's able to come back to like the United States, come back, because I'm an honorary U.S. citizen, or come to Canada. I don't know, like if like after she's got to stay. I'm just trying to think. There's got to be like a stipulation with it, like probably she can't leave, or maybe it must be based on the country. Okay, I think I'm walking through this myself. I know that countries would be like, oh, I don't like that charge, we don't have to let you in. Canada lets everybody in, so I feel like we would, but maybe not the United States, especially since it happened there. So I feel like you guys won't see her face again. But I hope everybody in the world sees the face, memorizes it, so if and when she gets out, she is not back up to her old tricks. And if she is, you better believe I'm going to be real loud at reminding everybody of what she's done to scar and traumatize these women. All right, that's it for me today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you so much. Thank you again to our sponsor, Twisted Tangle. You can download the game in the link in my description, or you can also scan the QR code. And the answer to today's riddle. Quick refresher, the riddle is, I have branches, but no fruit, trunk, or leaves. What am I? And the answer is a bank. A bank. Lately, does it feel like some of the riddles like actually kind of coincide with the story? That is so unintentional. But right now I'm like, oh, we were just talking about money and freaking devil Cat Torres taking people's money. That wasn't intentional. Anyways, okay, I love you guys. I will see you in the next video. I miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.